Greetings, viewers. Welcome to today's class. We're going to be talking about cell functions and structures. Cell functions and structures. Now, this particular topic for cells is for only medical students. Medical students have posted for the one of WAEC and JAM students. So this particular one will be for 100 level medical students in Nigeria. Now, before I continue, don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Now, we are going to first look at the definition of cells. What is a cell? A cell is the smallest structural and functional unit of living organism. It's the smallest functional and structural unit of every living organism. Now, as atom is to chemistry, that's how cells is to biology. Now, life process begins at the cellular level. So every life process begins with the cellular level. And before we go over to cell functions and their structures, we're going to look at what we call the cell theory. The cell theory. So now, cell theory, these are the postulates, these are the theories some scientists brought forth, or would I say such statements about cells. Now, the first person to discover cell was Robert Hooke in the year 1665. He actually discovered cell, but did not name it cells. It was further research that was made by other scientists that cell was actually named. Now, Matthias Kellerden stated that Matthias Kellerden and Theodore Schwann stated that the bodies of plants and animals are made up of cells. Then Rudolf Virchow stated that all cells come from pre-existing cells. Now, we'll go over to cell structure. Basically, we are going to be looking at the animal cell. The animal cells. Now, the first one we are going to look at is the nucleus. The nucleus. Now, the nucleus is the control tower, or the cell government, or the cell headquarters, because the activities of every cell is controlled by the nucleus. So nucleus control the activities of every cell. Now, the nucleus contains a genetic material called the DNA. The DNA, which means the deoxyribonucleic acid. The deoxyribonucleic acid, the DNA. Now, this DNA transcribe to what we call the messenger RNA. The messenger RNA and the transfer RNA. So the DNA transcribe to the messenger RNA and the transfer RNA. Now, this messenger RNA and the transfer RNA, they leave the nucleus through what we call the nuclear pod. The nuclear pod. So it actually leaves the nucleus through the nuclear pod. And once they leave the nuclear pod, now the messenger RNA will now, assuming this is the messenger RNA, will now come and lie right above the ribosomes. Will come and lie right above the ribosomes. Now, the ribosomes is actually a cell organelle found in the cytoplasm. Now, the major function of the ribosome is that it is the site for protein synthesis, site for protein synthesis. It is the site for protein synthesis. Now, this messenger RNA will come and lie above the ribosomes. Now, and the transfer RNA will go to the amino acid pool. We now go to the amino acid pool and now take some amino acid and come and place it right above the messenger RNA. And once they transfer RNA, collect the amino acid and place it above the once they transfer RNA, collect the amino acid and place it right above the messenger RNA, it will form what we call polypeptides. Now, the amount of amino acid that will be taken by the transfer RNA is determined by the DNA. If the DNA gives an instruction that it needs 2 amino acids, then the transfer RNA will now come and place 2 amino acids right above the messenger RNA. If it gives an instruction of 5, then the transfer RNA will come and collect 5 and place right above the messenger RNA. And this is how protein is being formed. Now, if you discover drugs like antibiotics, tetracycline, the major function of these antibiotics and tetracycline is, assuming if they want to go and fight bacteria, bacteria have cells, so it goes into the cell and stop the synthesis of protein. And once it stops the synthesis of protein, the bacteria actually dies, because every cell requires protein. So if these drugs, tetracycline and antibiotics, get into the bacterial cells, it actually stops the synthesis of protein and the bacteria will automatically die. Now, we also looked at ribosomes, which I said is the site for protein synthesis. Now, ribosome is divided into 2 subunits. We have the 50S subunit, and the 30S subunit, and the 30S subunit. The 50S subunit and the 30S subunit. Now, we will now look at what another cell organelle called the plasma membrane. The plasma membrane. Now, this plasma membrane actually acts as a covering or a protective covering to the cell. So plasma membrane covers and protects the cell. That's the primary function of the plasma membrane. And then this plasma membrane also have another function. It controls what enters and leaves the cell. It actually controls what enters and leaves the cell. Then we now look at another cell organelle. That's the cytoskeleton. The cytoskeleton is just like a protective. It's also, the primary function is that it provides mechanical support to a cell. Now, this cytoskeleton has fibers. There are fibers made from the cytoskeleton. They include the microtubule, the microfilaments, and the intermediate filaments. Now, The main role of the microtubule is that it helps in movement of materials around the cell. It helps movement of materials around the cell. So it supports movements in cells. Now, the microfilament helps in muscle contraction, helps in muscle contraction, and the intermediate filament helps in reinforcing the shape of a cell, reinforcing the shape of a cell. Now, I actually say that the cytoskeleton, they help to provide mechanical support to a cell, and they have three fibers: the microtubule, the microfilament, and the intermediate filament. The next organelle we are going to be looking at will be the endoplasmic reticulum. The endoplasmic reticulum. Now, we'll be looking at the endoplasmic reticulum. The endoplasmic reticulum has two types. We have the rough endoplasmic reticulum, and the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Now, this rough endoplasmic reticulum, it is actually described as the reticulum that the ribosomes are present in. So, in rough endoplasmic reticulum, it has ribosomes. While in smooth endoplasmic reticulum, there is absence of ribosome. So, in rough endoplasmic reticulum, there is ribosome present, and in smooth endoplasmic reticulum, there is absence of ribosome. Now, the rough endoplasmic reticulum is responsible, or it helps in the production of secretive proteins, like the antibodies. So the rough endoplasmic reticulum is responsible for producing the antibodies. Then the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, due to it does not have ribosomes, it is responsible for the synthesis of lipids, and the metabolism of carbohydrates. Now, the smooth endoplasmic reticulum is responsible for the synthesis of lipids, that is production of lipids, the metabolism of carbohydrates, and also the detoxification of toxins. Now, we are going to look at another important cell organelle called the peroxisome. The peroxisome is actually a membrane-bound organelle. Now, its function is that it does what we call the lipid metabolism. and enzyme catalysis. And enzyme catalysis. The lipid metabolism and enzyme catalysis. So this is the major function of the ribosome. It helps in lipid metabolism and enzyme catalysis. Now, liver is the organ for detoxification. Liver is an organ for detoxification. So the next cell organelle we're going to be looking at is the centroids. Now, this centroids is responsible for cell division. So centroids are responsible for cell or the division of what? Of the cells. Now, since centroids help in cell division, it is absent. Centroids is present in animals, yes, and absent in plants. Now, I want to ask a question. Since centroids are present in animals and absent in plants, what helps in cell division in plants? Now, there's an organ responsible for cell division in plants. We call it the microtubule collecting organs. The microtubule collecting organs. The microtubule collecting organs. This is responsible for the cell division in plants. Now, the next cell organelle we're going to be looking at is the lysosome. These lysosomes is responsible for production of some digestive enzymes like the protease, the lipase, the zymase, and others. Now, the major function of the lysosome is to produce this digestive enzyme, the protease, the lipase, and the zymase. Now, we'll go over to the next cell organelle known as the cytosol. Now, the cytosol is the semi-fluid part of the cytoplasm. It helps in the distribution of nutrients within a cell. There's also what we call the desmosomes. These desmosomes is the point of attachment between one animal tissue and another animal tissue. So it's the point of attachment between one animal tissue and another animal tissue. Then we look at the mitochondria. The mitochondria is known as the powerhouse of a cell. Where energy is being generated, or where ATP, that's the adenosine triphosphate, is being generated. And finally, we'll be looking at the cell organelle known as the chloroplast. This chloroplast is actually a cell organelle that occurs only in plant cells. Now, the chloroplast has pigment for photosynthesis, so it's also absent in animal cells. Now, let's look at the differences between plant cells and animal and animal cells. Now, in plant cells, there's absence of centroids, and in animal cells, centroids are presence of centroids. Now, in animal cell, where we talked about the desmosomes, that's the point of attachment of one animal tissue with another animal tissue. In plants, it is called plasmodemata. Plasmodemata. And what's this plasmodemata? The plasmodemata is a point of attachment of one plant tissue with another plant tissue. Another difference is that in plants, chloroplast is present. Why is present? Why in animal we have absence of chloroplasts. And in plants, cell wall is present. Why in animal there's absence of cell wall. Now, this will be the end of this class. Thank you for viewing, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Thank you.